There's something we all carry inside. Something we almost never show. Something we hide even from the people closest to us. Sometimes, something we don't even allow ourselves to see. These are our wounds. The emotional wounds we've carried since childhood. The words that were said to us that we never forgot. The experiences that shaped us. The rejections that cut deep. The times we felt we weren't enough. And these wounds, these invisible scars, are the main reason it's so hard for you to love yourself. Welcome. This is the third episode of Love for Real. And today we're going to talk about something profound, something vulnerable, something necessary. We're going to talk about the wounds that stop you from loving yourself. Not to reopen the pain, but to heal it. Not to assign blame, but to find freedom. Not to remain stuck in the past, but to create a different future. Let me ask you something, and I want you to really sit with this question. Where does that voice in your head come from? That voice that tells you you're not enough. That voice that constantly criticizes you. That minimizes your accomplishments. That compares you to everyone else and always finds you lacking. That voice wasn't born with you. You learned it. Someone taught it to you. Some experience planted it. Some painful moment strengthened it. And now, that voice has become so familiar, you believe it's yours, that it's the truth, that this is just how things are. But it's not. That voice is the echo of your wounds. And today, we're going to start healing them. We all carry emotional wounds. Every single one of us. It doesn't matter how loving your family was. It doesn't matter how privileged your childhood might have been. It doesn't matter how much care you received. Being human means being wounded. Because growing up requires vulnerability. And vulnerability inevitably includes moments of pain. Some of us grew up with parents who, without meaning to, hurt us with their words. Stop crying. Toughen up. Why can't you be more like your brother? You're being too sensitive. Don't be so dramatic. Messages that seemed harmless at the time, but carved themselves deep. Others grew up believing we had to earn love, that we had to perform, achieve, excel, be the good child, not make waves. And we internalized the belief that our worth was conditional, that love had to be deserved. Some of us experienced rejection. The kid who wasn't chosen for the team. The girl left out of the friend group. The teenager whose heart was broken by their first love. Moments that, to an adult, might seem small, but to a child or teenager, feel like the end of the world. And we internalize the message. There's something wrong with me. And here's the most important thing I want you to understand today. Those unhealed wounds become the beliefs you hold about yourself. They become the way you talk to yourself. They become the relationships you choose. They become the boundaries you don't set. They become the dreams you don't pursue. Your unhealed wounds are running your life. But here's the incredibly hopeful news. Wounds can heal. Beliefs can change. The critical voice can transform into a compassionate one. It's not easy, it's not fast, but it's possible. And today, we're going to start that journey together. Let me explain something from psychology. Something that will shift how you see your own struggles with self-love. When you're a child, your brain is in survival mode. Your primary job is to be loved and protected by your caregivers, because without them, you literally don't survive. So what happens when you experience rejection, constant criticism, or neglect? Your child brain doesn't think, my parents are having a hard time, or they are dealing with their own issues. Your child brain thinks, I must be doing something wrong. There's something wrong with me. I need to change to be loved. And that's where what psychologists call an attachment wound is formed. There are several common types of emotional wounds. The wound of rejection. You grow up feeling like you don't belong, that you're on the outside, that there's something different about you in a wrong way. The wound of abandonment. You grow up with a constant fear of being left, of people walking away, of ending up alone. The wound of humiliation. You grow up feeling shame about who you are, your body, your needs, your emotions. The wound of betrayal. You grow up unable to trust, always expecting to be hurt, building walls to protect yourself. The wound of injustice. You grow up feeling you're never good enough, that you need to be perfect, that any mistake is unforgivable. Do you recognize any of these in yourself? You probably recognize more than one, because we rarely have just one wound. It's usually a combination. And these wounds get triggered in your adult life. When someone criticizes you and you feel completely devastated, that's your humiliation wound. When a relationship ends and you feel like you won't survive, that's your abandonment wound. When you make a mistake at work and beat yourself up for days, that's your injustice wound. The problem isn't that you have wounds. The problem is that you didn't know you had them. And what you don't know, you can't heal. But now, you're beginning to know them. And that is the first step towards healing. I want to share Sarah's story with you. Sarah is 29. She's a graphic designer, successful in her career, admired by her friends, beautiful on the outside. But inside, Sarah feels empty. For as long as you can remember, Sarah has felt she needs to be perfect. Perfect at school, perfect in her appearance, perfect at work, perfect as a daughter, perfect as a friend. And when she's not, when she makes a mistake, when she gains a few pounds, when a project isn't flawless, she hates herself. Sarah doesn't understand why she's so hard on herself. Her friends tell her, "You're amazing, don't be so critical." But she can't help it. That voice in her head never rests. Sarah came to therapy after a breakdown at work. She had made a small mistake on a design, a mistake her boss didn't even notice at first. But when he pointed it out, Sarah fell apart. She spent the entire night awake, crying, thinking, I'm a fraud. Everyone's going to realize I'm not good enough. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to disappoint everyone. And that was the moment she realized, this isn't normal. This isn't a healthy way to live. In therapy, Sarah began exploring her childhood, and she remembered something she had forgotten, or rather, something she had normalized. Her mother was a wonderful woman, loving, dedicated. but she was also deeply perfectionistic. Every time Sarah brought home a grade from school, her mother would say, "Why wasn't it an A? What happened?" Every time Sarah showed a drawing, her mother found something to improve. Every time Sarah cried, her mother said, "Don't be so dramatic. They are kids with real problems." Her mother was never cruel, never yelled, never hurt her physically. But she also never told Sarah she was enough just as she was. And Sarah learned, my worth depends on my perfection. If I'm not perfect, I'm not lovable. My emotions are a weakness. And that became her wound of injustice, the wound that has haunted her entire life, the wound that stops her from loving herself. Sarah's work in therapy was difficult because healing wounds means feeling the pain you've been avoiding. Sarah had to allow herself to cry for the little girl who never felt she was enough. She had to acknowledge the anger she felt toward the mother who, with good intentions, had caused so much harm. She had to accept that her perfectionism wasn't a virtue, but a wound. And she had to do something incredibly difficult. She had to start talking to herself differently. Every time she made a mistake and that critical voice appeared saying, "You're a failure," Sarah learned to pause, to breathe, and to respond with compassion. I made a mistake. That makes me human. I can learn from this. At first, she didn't believe it. The words felt false, like she was lying to herself. Because for 29 years, her brain had been trained to believe she was only valuable when she was perfect. And now, she was trying to reprogram that belief. But Sarah kept practicing, day after day, mistake after mistake, moment after moment. And slowly, something began to shift. The critical voice was still there, but it wasn't the only voice anymore. Now, there was another voice, a softer voice, a kinder voice, a more compassionate voice, the voice of self-love. Sarah began noticing small but significant changes. She could enjoy a meal without calculating calories. She could turn in a project without obsessively reviewing it 20 times. She could receive a compliment without immediately dismissing it. She could make a mistake and not feel like her life was ending. And most importantly, she started to actually like herself. Not just when she was perfect, not just when she achieved something, but simply for existing. The last time I spoke with Sarah, she told me something beautiful. For the first time in my life, I feel at peace with myself. Not because I've achieved perfection, but because I stopped chasing it. Not because I don't have wounds anymore, but because I'm learning to heal them. Sarah's story is the story of so many. The story of someone who finally decided to look at herself with compassion, who decided she was worthy of being loved just as she was, imperfect, human, real. So how do we heal our wounds? How do we move from that relentless critical voice to a compassionate one? There's no magic formula. There's no 10-step process that works for everyone. But there are principles. There is a path. And that path begins with 3 fundamental steps. The first step is identification. You need to identify what your wounds are. This sounds simple, but it's profoundly difficult. Because your wounds are so normalized in your life, you don't even see them as wounds. You think, this is just who I am. This is just how things work. This is normal. But it's not. So how do you identify your wounds? Ask yourself, when do I feel most vulnerable? What situations trigger me emotionally in disproportionate ways? If you're criticized at work and you sink for days, what wound got activated? If someone cancels plans and you feel abandonment panic, what wound got activated? If you make a small mistake and you brutally attack yourself, what wound got activated? Also ask yourself, what messages did I receive as a child about my worth? Was I told I was enough just as I was? Or that I needed to change to be loved? Were my emotions validated? Or was I told I was overreacting? Were my mistakes learning opportunities or sources of shame? These questions aren't comfortable. They might bring up pain. They might bring tears. But they also bring clarity, because you finally understand why you treat yourself the way you do. And understanding is the first step toward healing. Because you can't change what you don't know. You can't heal what you don't acknowledge. So start there. Identify your wounds. Name them. Recognize where they came from. Not to blame anyone, not to stay trapped in the past, but to understand your present and change your future. The second step to healing your wounds is validation. And this is probably the most powerful step, because validating your pain is the direct antidote to emotional wounds. What does it mean to validate? It means acknowledging that your pain is real, that your wounds are legitimate, that what you felt as a child was valid. Even if the adults around you told you that you were overreacting, even if they minimized your pain, even if they told you it wasn't a big deal, your pain was real, and it deserves to be acknowledged. This is difficult for many people, because we've been trained to minimize our own pain. Others had it worse than me. It wasn't that bad. I shouldn't feel this way. It's in the past. I should be over it. These thoughts are another way of hurting yourself, because you're denying the validity of your experience. But here's the truth. Your pain doesn't need to be the worst pain in the world to be valid. Your wound doesn't need to be the deepest wound to deserve healing. Comparing your pain to others is a trap, because there will always be someone who had it worse. But that doesn't make your pain any less real. So how do you practice validation? When a painful memory surfaces, don't push it away. Don't say, it's in the past, it doesn't matter. Instead say, that was difficult. That hurt me. And it's okay that it hurt. When you feel overwhelmed by an emotion, don't judge it. Don't minimize it. Say, I'm feeling this, and it's okay to feel this. My emotions are valid. And if possible, say these words out loud, because there's something powerful about hearing your own voice validating your experience. Validating doesn't mean staying stuck in the pain. It doesn't mean wallowing in victimhood. validating means acknowledging what was so you can release it. Honoring the pain of the past so you don't have to carry it in the present. And sometimes validating means crying. It means feeling the sadness you've been avoiding. It means allowing yourself to feel anger about the things that hurt you. And that's okay. Tears aren't weakness. They are healing in process. The third step to healing your wounds is reprogramming. This is the longest step, the most challenging, the one that requires the most patience. Because reprogramming beliefs you've held for decades doesn't happen overnight. What does reprogramming mean? It means changing the fundamental beliefs you hold about yourself. Changing "I am not enough" to "I am enough exactly as I am." Changing "I need to be perfect to be loved" to "I'm lovable with all my imperfections." Changing "there's something wrong with me" to "I'm worthy of unconditional love." But here's the challenge. You can't just decide to believe something new and be done. Your brain has spent years, maybe decades, reinforcing the old beliefs. So you have to reprogram it, neuron by neuron, thought by thought. How do you do this? First, identify the specific limiting beliefs. Write them down, make them conscious. I believe I'm only valuable when I achieve things. I believe my emotions are a burden. I believe if I show my true self, I'll be rejected. Just naming them already takes away some of their power. Second, create alternative beliefs. Not just superficially positive, but real, believable. Instead of "I'm not enough," say, "I'm learning to see myself with more compassion." Instead of "I need to be perfect," say, "I can make mistakes and still be valuable." Notice the difference. They're not grandiose affirmations your brain will reject. They're gentle truths you can begin to believe. Third, practice the new beliefs in real situations. When you make a mistake at work and that critical voice appears, respond consciously with a new belief. Yes, I made a mistake. That makes me human. I can learn from this and move forward. At first, it will feel fake, like you're acting. But with time, with consistent repetition, it becomes more natural. Fourth, look for evidence of the new beliefs. Your brain has spent years looking for evidence that you're not enough. And it found it, because we always find what we're looking for. Now, intentionally look for evidence to the contrary. Moments when you were enough. People who loved you despite your imperfections. Mistakes you made and survived. The evidence is there. You just need to start seeing it. And finally, be patient with yourself. Reprogramming your brain takes time. There will be days when the old critical voice is louder. There will be moments when you feel like you're not making progress. But every time you respond with compassion instead of criticism, every time you validate your pain instead of minimizing it, every time you choose a new belief over an old one, you're healing, you're changing, you're building the self-love you always deserved to have. I want us to reflect on something important. Your wounds don't define who you are. I know sometimes it feels that way. You feel like you're the damaged one, the broken one, the one with too much baggage. And you wonder if anyone will ever be able to love you with all these wounds. if you'll ever be normal, if you'll ever feel at peace. But here's the truth. Your wounds are part of your story, but they're not your identity. You are so much more than the things that hurt you. You're also your resilience, your courage, your ability to keep going despite the pain. You're the times you got back up after falling. You're the compassion you developed because you know pain. You're the empathy you have because you've suffered. Your wounds gave you sensitivity, depth, humanity. That doesn't mean the wounds were good. It doesn't mean the pain was justified. But it means you can transform that pain into something meaningful. You can take those wounds and use them to be more compassionate with yourself and others. You know what's one of the most beautiful things I see in my work? The most compassionate people are those who have suffered the most. The most empathetic people are those who have been deeply hurt. The wisest people are those who have walked through darkness and found the light. Not because suffering is necessary for growth, but because when you choose to heal, when you choose to transform your pain, you become something extraordinary. And that's what you're doing right now. By listening to this episode, by exploring your wounds, by seeking to heal, you're choosing not to stay trapped in the pain. You're choosing to transform yourself. And that takes incredible courage. So I want you to know this. The fact that you're here, that you're willing to look at your wounds, already says something profound about who you are. It says you're brave, that you're resilient, that you deserve all the love you're learning to give yourself. Your wounds don't make you less. They make you human. And you deserve to be loved exactly as you are. There's something else I want you to understand about wounds. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. Many people think healing means the pain completely disappears. That one day you'll wake up and no longer remember what hurt you. That the wounds simply erase. But that's not healing. That would be amnesia. Healing means you remember, but the memory no longer controls you. Think of it this way. A physical wound, when it heals, leaves a scar. The scar is there. You can see it, you can touch it, but it doesn't hurt anymore. It doesn't bleed anymore. It doesn't stop you from moving. Emotional wounds are the same. When you heal, the memory remains. You can remember what happened. You can remember how you felt. But it no longer destroys you. It no longer defines every decision you make. It no longer stops you from moving forward. And you know what's most beautiful about emotional scars? They become wisdom. That painful experience now allows you to understand others going through the same thing. That healed wound now allows you to set healthier boundaries. That transformed pain now allows you to have compassion for yourself. Scars are proof that you survived, that you healed, that you're stronger than you thought. So don't expect to forget. Don't expect the past to disappear. Instead, expect to transform it. Expect the pain to become wisdom. Expect the wound to become a scar that no longer hurts. And when you reach that point, when you can remember without breaking, when you can talk about it without falling apart, you'll know you've healed. Not because you forgot, but because you transformed the pain into growth. And that is true self-love. Not denying your past, but honoring it and choosing a different future. Before we move to concrete practices, I want to talk to you about something fundamental: forgiveness. Many people, when they start exploring their wounds, encounter anger. Anger toward parents who didn't know how to love better. Anger toward people who hurt them. Anger toward themselves for allowing themselves to be hurt. And that anger is valid. It's part of the healing process. But there comes a point on the journey where you have to decide what to do with that anger. You can stay there, you can feed it, you can use it as fuel for bitterness, or you can transform it through forgiveness. And here's the most important thing about forgiveness. Forgiving doesn't mean saying what happened was okay. It doesn't mean excusing the harm. It doesn't mean you have to reconcile with the person who hurt you. Forgiving means releasing the poison you're drinking. Because resentment hurts you more than it hurts the person you resent. You know what happens when you don't forgive? You remain emotionally tied to the person who hurt you. You give them power over your present. You allow the past to continue hurting you today. And that person doesn't even know you're giving them that power. They probably don't even know how much they hurt you. Or maybe they do, but they don't care. Meanwhile, you are carrying the weight, the anger, the resentment, the pain. So forgiving is an act of self-love. You don't do it for the other person. You do it for yourself. Because you deserve to be free. You deserve to release that weight. You deserve to live without being tied to the past. And sometimes, the hardest part is forgiving yourself. Forgiving yourself for the times you didn't defend yourself. For the times you tolerated the intolerable. For the times you hurt yourself. And here is what I want you to understand. In that moment, with what you knew, with the resources you had, you did the best you could. Maybe now, with the perspective of time, you can see you could have done something different. But in that moment, you didn't know. And punishing yourself for not knowing then what you know now is unfair. So forgive yourself. Forgive your past self for not being able to protect you better. Forgive the people who hurt you for not knowing how to love better. Not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. And forgiveness is the path to that peace. Now I want to give you 3 concrete practices. 3 exercises you can start doing today to heal your wounds. Practice number 1. The letter to your inner child. This is one of the most powerful exercises for healing childhood wounds. Take a photo of yourself as a child. Between ages 5 and 10 is ideal. Look at yourself in that photo. Really look. And then, write a letter to that child. Tell them what they needed to hear in that moment. You are enough exactly as you are. Your emotions are valid. You don't have to be perfect to be loved. I'm sorry if no one told you this before, but I'm telling you now. You deserve unconditional love. Write everything that child needed to hear and never heard. And then read that letter out loud. Because there is something deeply healing about hearing those words. Your brain doesn't completely distinguish between past and present. When you speak to your inner child with love, you're healing those wounds in the present. Practice number 2. Daily compassionate dialogue. For the next 30 days, commit to this. Every time you catch yourself being critical toward yourself, pause, breathe, and reframe with compassion. If you think, I'm such an idiot for making that mistake, reframe. I made a mistake. I'm human. I can learn from this. If you think, I'm never going to be enough, reframe. I'm in the process of growth. I am enough in this moment. At first, this will feel mechanical, artificial, but with practice, it becomes more natural. Practice number 3, the forgiveness ceremony. This one is for when you're ready. Don't force it. Write a letter to whoever hurt you. It could be a parent, an ex, a friend, even yourself. Write everything, without filter, with complete honesty. Say everything you need to say. The anger, the pain, the sadness. And then, at the end of the letter, write, I choose to forgive you. Not because what you did was okay, but because I deserve peace. I choose to release you. I choose to release this pain. I choose to free myself. And then, do something symbolic with that letter. Burn it, bury it, tear it into small pieces. The physical act of destroying the letter represents the emotional act of releasing. And every time you feel the resentment returning, remind yourself, I already released this. I already freed myself. I already forgave. These 3 practices aren't magic. They won't heal decades of pain in a week. But if you practice them consistently, if you commit to your own healing, they will transform your relationship with yourself. And that is the foundation of everything. We've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about wounds, about pain, about healing. And I know this isn't easy. Exploring your wounds requires courage. Validating your pain requires honesty. Reprogramming your beliefs requires patience. But I want you to know something. The simple fact that you're here, that you're willing to do this work, already says something incredible about you. It says you haven't given up on yourself. It says that despite all the pain, you still believe you deserve to heal. It says you have the courage to look at yourself honestly and with compassion. And that is self-love in action. It's not perfect self-love. It's not complete self-love. But it's the beginning. And every day you choose to be compassionate with yourself. Every time you validate your pain instead of minimizing it. Every time you reframe a critical thought with a compassionate one, you're healing. Step by step, wound by wound. So let me ask you something. What would happen if, from today forward, you treated yourself with the same compassion you'd give someone you love? What if your wounds, instead of defining you, transformed you? What if your past pain became present wisdom? What if your vulnerability became your greatest strength? That is what happens when you choose to heal. when you choose not to stay trapped in the pain, when you choose to transform your wounds into growth. And that process begins now, with a decision, with a commitment to yourself, with the self-love you always deserved to have. Before I go, I want to leave you with a truth. You don't have to heal alone. Sometimes we believe healing is a solitary process, that we have to figure it all out on our own, that asking for help is weakness. But that's not true. Healing often requires help. It might be the help of a therapist, a support group, a trusted friend, people who have walked this path before you. There's no shame in asking for help. In fact, recognizing you need it is an act of strength. And if there's one thing I want you to take away from this episode, it's this. Your wounds don't make you less valuable. Your pain doesn't make you less worthy of love. Your past doesn't determine your future. You are so much more than the things that hurt you. You're resilient, you're brave, you're worthy, and you deserve healing. You deserve peace. You deserve self-love. In the next episode, we'll talk about true friendship. That love we choose. That love that sustains us. That love that, when it's real, is one of life's most beautiful gifts. But for now, thank you for being here. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for choosing to heal. Remember, healing your wounds isn't an act of weakness. It's an act of self-love. And you deserve all that love. Until the next episode, and in the meantime, be gentle with yourself. Until next time.